Hello, everybody. Today we are in class, is it 4? Yeah, class 4 of our little mini psychic class here. And today we're going to talk about what is being an empath all about. So this is an important topic and one that's also near and dear to my heart. So, and empaths are really, empathy is kind of a real specific psychic gift that kind of really needs its own, conversation. And it's sort of a timely topic. There's a lot of people coming to the realization now that they might be an empath. And I wanted to actually talk a little bit about what being an empath is, just so to define the term, right? So, empaths are the super sensitive, highly sensitive people. And they're the feelers of the world, right? And empathy is not just sort of the psychological quality of empathy. That's not what I'm talking about, where we look at somebody and feel what they're feeling, like compassion, like, oh, I feel so bad that that person is having a feeling. And I mean, we really need this psychological quality of empathy. It's super important. But being an empath is really sort of different from this. So being an empath means that we're like the psychic sponges of the world. We take in other people's feelings and we feel them as if they're our feelings, right? So you don't just notice somebody's having a feeling, you actually are experiencing the feeling yourself. And I, for the first time that I remember that this happened to me, I was in college, so I was 17 or 18, I was at UMass. And I was feeling really good. It was a Friday night. I went to a party, and I walked into the party, sat down next to this guy who was really having a bad day. He was super depressed. He was just crying and I was sitting very close to him. And then all of a sudden it came over me like, oh my God, I feel awful. I don't know what's wrong with me. I must be crazy. I don't know why I'm so moody. I have to leave, and I was like, really not in good shape. So I got up and I walked out of the party, and I was standing on the porch and turned around just in this moment, turned around and looked through the window. I could see that guy I was just sitting next to. And I was fine again. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't my feelings I was feeling. I was actually experiencing his feelings as if they were mine. And that was the moment that the penny dropped for me, and I was like, okay, this isn't me. I'm not crazy. I'm not moody. I'm not, just randomly feeling crazy things. It's actually this quality of what happens with an empath. Okay. So there's really two ways that we experience this for most people. One is emotional empathy, which is what I just described, like where you feel someone's emotions as if they're yours, right? And there's physical empathy, which is when, I do energy healings for people. When I have them in my office and I put my hands on them, I can feel in my body what they're feeling in their body. Like all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, my lower back hurts. And that's when you ask, oh, how's your lower back feeling today? It takes a little bit of work for empaths to learn how to distinguish what's theirs and what's somebody else's. So we're constantly in this inquiry about what somebody else's are. And the thing that I really want you to know about this is my very deep belief about empaths is that there's a reason we have these gifts, and it's not just to torture us or for us to feel like we're cursed, because that's sometimes how we feel, but it's really the gift of the healer. So if you can think about those two things, you put your hands on somebody and you feel in their body what they feel, and you feel their emotions. This is like the perfect diagnostic equipment for somebody that's meant to be a healer. It's like a built-in MRI X-ray machine. And I don't know, that's what the gift of empathy is really all about. It's the gift of the healer. And I think there's many ways to do this. Not everyone's going to be a healer like the way I do it. Maybe, you're a caretaker, you're a helper, you're a nurse, you're a kindergarten teacher, you're a mom, you are, whatever you feel called to do. And also, let's get this clear. There are as many men empaths as there are women. This is not something that is strictly a female thing. In fact, men have a much more difficult time, I believe, with this gift than women do. They suffer more at the hands of it because there's less, at least in our culture, social leeway for sensitive dudes. and they tend to get a little more backlash or feel like they have to hide this part of them. It's quite difficult, I think. The other thing that I want to say about empaths, really all empaths are psychic. I never met one that wasn't. I've met some psychics that weren't empathic. Okay, they didn't have empathy as one of their gifts. But I never met an empath that didn't have sort of the fully loaded program of all these other psychic skills. So a lot of empaths, will be sensitive. They're super sensitive to energies, the environmental energies, energies of places, spiritual energies. This is something that goes together. So I think if you're an empath, you have to work really extra hard at training yourself. So we have to learn how to, we have to learn how to hold our own. There's a lot that goes into this. We have to really learn boundaries. It's super difficult for us. We have to learn how to hold our own in energetically in difficult environments. We have to learn how to clear, ground, and protect, like we talked about yesterday. So, it's tricky because until we learn all those things, we can really suffer and feel a lot of pain. So here's my little empath test, and you can ask yourself these sort of questions. Do you feel like other people's feelings as if they're happening to you? Do you feel overwhelmed in crowded places? You might be a little introverted if you're an empath. Maybe you're prone to anxiety and depression. You might be very connected to the natural world, right? Or little kids, animals, you might prefer them. You might notice that you feel sucked dry by the people in your lives, right? You probably will have trouble setting boundaries and saying no to people. And you were very sensitive as a child. It's my little test. If you said yes to most of those things, you probably really can consider yourself an empath. So, like I said, it really requires this extra training. It's very difficult and painful to be the sensitive without the fundamental training we need. Empaths often struggle with anxiety and depression. They can be prone to addictions. Oftentimes they have social anxiety. So it really, it's a challenge until you learn how to manage your sensitivity. And this also puts empaths, it's difficult social situations, put empaths in a really difficult position, because when your life purpose is to be a healer, it's very hard to do that when you can't be in a hospital or out in public or working with people, and because you feel like a raw nerve, you feel too exposed. So there's this sad catch-22. We're meant to serve, and we have difficulty with that until we really learn how to manage ourselves. And I find that that contributes a lot to the depression that sometimes empaths have. So we talked a little bit yesterday about the porous energy field, of the empath, and I just want to also highlight that again today. It's an important part of this conversation. So when you have an empath, oftentimes, or when you are an empath, our fields are way more expanded than other people. So they tend to get quite larger than arms length out, and that boundary layer is very porous, right? So you can imagine what it's like to be out in the world with this expanded porous energy field. And I think that empaths are very tuned into the suffering of the world. So they go out, they're super energetically sensitive, and when we go out in the world, I think we have maybe a 20-minute limit on places that are very, unless I'm really, consciously practicing my energy management, I get very overwhelmed in places like Walmart or big supermarkets or shopping malls or places like that, that we go into something called empathic overload. And with empathic overload, it's like if you're a psychic sponge, it's like the sponge is full. So it can happen at the end of the day. I used to see this happen with my empathic children. Some of my kids were empaths, that they'd come home from school and they'd be in this empathic overload. So when we hit empathic overload, we often will feel dissociated. So you kind of pop out of your body and you get that spinning in your head, or you just can't feel your body anymore. We might be tired, dizzy, cranky, hangry, hungry, and most people who are empathic can just only take so much of this before they need a nap. You need alone time, you need to be in nature, you need to kind of go into your recovery process when we've hit empathic overload. So if you are an empath, you probably are nodding your head and going, yep, empathic overload, I know what that feels like. And you might have your specific triggers for you, maybe it's your family, maybe it's holidays, maybe it's work, maybe it's crowded places, right? So just watch what your triggers are for there. And then we really need to practice, be very diligent with our self-care, be very diligent with our spiritual practice, whatever the clearing and the grounding and protecting that we talked about yesterday. This is something that's super important. So if like you're going into I don't know what it is about Market Basket, that's the one that really is tough for me, this sort of big, huge supermarket. So when I go there, I sit in my car and I do my grounding. I get in my body, I put my shield on, I go in there. I have to bring my list because sometimes like I get halfway through and I feel like knocked out of my body and I like can't remember what I got there. So I get halfway through and I do that again. I ground, I clear, I set my shields, and maybe even then when I come out of there, I have to do that again. So when we really learn how to manage our boundaries, that's a boundary issue. So I'm consciously managing my boundaries. Then the world becomes much more doable. Then you can step into your life purpose in a much more powerful way, right? So one of the things that I really love about working with empaths and training them is the beauty for me is to see somebody who's like can't get off the couch, they're kind of sick, they have depression, they have anxiety, go from there to being like really, feel the call to, however, I worked with somebody a while ago who was just this fabulous hospice worker, and hospice worker, it's hard. She was a nurse. She was, she's a Reiki practitioner, and what's more beautiful than being called into service to do hospice work? And at the end of every, session that she did, she'd be like flat on the couch, unable to deal with life, feeling sick, having a migraine, all this kind of stuff that was hard for her. And she was like, I'm gonna have to quit. Like, I can't do this. This is too hard for me. And using the practices of really managing her energy in a very conscious way, she was, diligently, she was able to kind of let that go and function again and go back to work. And thank God. I mean, like, it's sad for me when I see people who aren't able to manage their energy, because God knows the world needs all the healers it can get. That's just what I think, right? So, and I think a lot of times too, like with the depression, anxiety, and addiction, it's like the depression will come from that not being able to live in our life purpose. It comes from the accumulation of everyone else's energy that we pick up and hold on to. And it comes from being attuned sort of to the pain and suffering of the world, which empaths are usually very sensitive to this. They have really strong radar for the pain and suffering of the world. So, things that happen on when you read the news, I mean, it's like every day now you look at the news and there's some horrible thing somewhere going on that's really can hit an empath and take it out of us, right? So again, this energy management techniques, like when you ground and you clear and you learn how to release the energy that you pick up, I find that for the most part, empaths can handle their own feelings well enough, it's this accumulation of other people's stuff that gets on us that really can sort of knock us out. I also feel like with anxiety, the anxiety comes from a generalized feeling of not feeling safe in the world. And that it's made worse by when there's breaks in the energy field. We talked about that yesterday. When there's breaks, tears, rips in the energy field, when that porous energy field is out there, and you're in sort of the chaotic environment of the world, you can have this feeling of not being safe. And I find mindfulness practice works really well there. So there's this like truth in a way, there's a truth that the world isn't always safe. We know that's true. You just turn on the news and that's true. And yet in this moment, I'm perfectly safe. So keep minding your boundaries, keeping that outer edge of your field strong and doing your practices helps. And then really keeping yourself in the present moment where you're okay. In this moment, I'm perfectly safe. And you'll probably find that most of the time that's true. And when it's not true, you can actually handle, like if a real crisis is happening, you can actually probably handle it pretty well. So, and then the addictions that empaths suffer from often, I think, come from the attempt to sort of turn off the feelings, turn off the noise, turn off like the oversensitivity, and there can be a pull towards, substances of all kinds to try and dumb down our sensitivity, kind of turn it off. And again, when we do these basic practices, addiction is a complicated issue, and it's, needs to be handled. So is depression and anxiety. These are complex issues and need to be handled through multiple, healing routes, therapy, body work, spiritual work, energy work, and also this energetic boundary work, right? So I guess what, the lesson here is that if you are an empath, you really need special self-care. We need to be very diligent with our self-care. We need to be very dedicated to it and doing the grounding and protecting work, however that works for you, and if you're, probably found your own things that are effective for you. So we need special attention. I think always. I can never really let up on that stuff. And it's also good to remember that there's an upside here, right? That there's a reason that we're so sensitive, and that reason is that we are here to help. We are sort of here to serve and be helpers, healers, caretakers, and finding the way that works for you will help you really begin to see that empathy as a gift. And of course, psychic training. So if you feel like, if you need some psychic training, this class that I'm starting to teach next week, Mastering Your Psychic Ability, will give you the basic grounding and energy management practices that you need as an empath, and also help you begin to open to the, the more skillful way of being in control of your own self. And I think a lot of psychic development and empathic training is like, we need to be the boss of our abilities, and they're not the boss of us. So I hope you find that helpful for today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Keep practicing your guided meditation. Do that guided meditation to ground, clear, and protect. And really, if you're an empath and a strong empath, sort of turn it around in your head and see the gift. See if you can understand what your role is, how your unique gifts are meant to serve the world. So hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks. Bye.